We're going to give everyone about 60 more seconds to join our little fun discussion today. I'm going to go on Facebook and make sure that it's streaming live. Hope everyone's having a good day. It's Friday. Yay. That's always good news. And it's December. And Christmas is right around the corner. So we've got a lot of things to look forward to. So let's see if we're working. Okay. Come on. Come on, technology. I hope yep, we're live. Looks good. So hope everyone's doing well. And I had some friends over for lunch today, and we were discussing how none of us are really ready for Christmas this year. I feel like I say that every year, but it feels like every year it gets worse, where I'm like, really? It's this close? Just crazy how close it is. Usually I'm much further along with all of my Christmas shopping, and this year I feel like I'm a little behind. So, all right, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about why does manners matter? But I want to tell you about, so we've got a little chat box, and I'd love for you to say hello. I'd love for you to say that you're here, and let me know that you can hear it. So it's sometimes hard to discover if you are being heard and seen by everyone. But we're going to talk about the theme of today is based on a question that I get from time to time when people meet me and discover what I do for a living. They're like, do people really still teach manners? Do people still really talk about chivalry? Is that still something? Is that still in? And those are the people that I really like to get a hold of. And so we're going to talk about that. I think this is a great live for your kids to watch, to just get them, motivated to want to learn these skills, but to understand better why learning these skills can impact their life so much. So I'm just going to share some stories. I'm going to share some just little examples that people have shared with me over the years. I have hundreds of examples, but I'm going to just pick out a couple that I want to share with you to help us identify where we're lacking and where we can improve. Here's one thing that I've discovered. I have a lot of parents that say to me, I try to be a good example to my kids, and isn't that enough? I'm hoping that as my kids watch my example, that they'll learn. And you know what, parents, it's really not enough. That's what we're seeing. And you can tell that it's not enough by looking around at our society. And so what we know at Fundamentals for Kids is that parents and educators have to be much more purposeful. We actually have to say with our mouth and not just our actions what we want our children to do and how to behave. Yes, the most important thing we can do for our children is to be a living example the best we can as to someone who lives with integrity and manners and compassion. But we have to say the words, and we have to have purposeful discussions with our kids outside of correction. You'll hear Stacy and I say that a lot as we teach. So let me give you an example. I had this man, he was a CEO of a company, share with me when he saw my booth one time. He said, I had this young woman who I was going to interview. He said, we had a planned Skype interview. He said she was in another state, and thus the first interview was just going to be Skype before we paid to have her come to our company. But he said her resume was really impressive. So she was a college graduate. She was top of her class. He spoke to her on the telephone and was pretty impressed with her on the telephone. And so they scheduled a Skype interview, and it was scheduled to be at 8:30 on a weekday morning. So he said when he dialed the Skype, he said she answered, and she was in her car on her cell phone. And so he was a little shocked by that, a little surprised, but he thought, well, maybe she's just running late and hasn't quite got to her location where she's planning on doing the interview. So he said to her, "Oh, have you not arrived at your destination yet? You know, it's okay. Do you want to put this off for 5 more minutes?" Even though it would have been important that she was ready on time, he was being generous and telling her that if she needed another 5 minutes to get to her location. And she said, "Oh no," she says, I'm just going to do the interview in my car if that's okay with you." She said, "I can multitask really good, and I've got several errands to run today, so we can go ahead with the interview." And so this college graduate, top of her class, thought that it was appropriate that she conduct a job interview on her cell phone while she was driving. And it was a face-to-face, Skype. So not only was it very dangerous, it was so unprofessional. And the second this young woman said that, the gentleman said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in continuing with the interview. Thank you anyway," and hung up the phone or the Skype call. The thing is, what this young woman didn't know, what she had not been taught, what she had not learned, was several etiquette skills. Number one being that as a show of respect of how important it is when we interview for a job, that we pay honor to the person that we're interviewing with, and we give our undivided full attention. And I have a whole hour-and-a-half workshop on interviewing etiquette, so I won't go into all the skills that are involved in that. But there was a real lack of skills for this young woman to think that it was appropriate to conduct an interview like that. So once again, parents, I'm sure this young woman was a lovely young woman, very smart. You can't be the top of your class if you're not very smart. But she was missing a very critical skill, and that's an etiquette skill, a chivalry skill about appropriate behavior and about the message that we send through our behavior. The message that she sent this man, the CEO of a company, was that she wasn't really interested in the job, that it wasn't of the highest priority to her, or else she wouldn't have conducted it on her cell phone. So those are skills that are missing. I had another woman come to my booth once and share a story. She looked around at all of my items that I teach children table manners, and she said to me, "You know what, Miss Irvin, I can see now that I really dropped the ball, and I let my children down when it comes to teaching them all of these skills." She goes, "We're such a laid-back, casual family that I just really never thought it was important to teach them etiquette at the table. I mean, I didn't want them to eat with their mouth closed, with their mouth open, and I would correct them for that. But beyond that, we didn't really learn a lot of skills." And she said, "I really didn't think it mattered until my youngest son was given a scholarship at a college. He is a pianist, a wonderful pianist, and he was given a scholarship at a liberal arts college. And he just really excelled at school in his concert piano." She said his junior year, he was approached by the college administration because of his high achievement at the campus, and was asked if he would be willing to go with the administration from time to time when they took out to dinner potential donors to the college. So basically, they would wine and dine potential donors, and they wanted a student to go with them who could share with these potential donors their experience at the college, to let these potential donors know what a wonderful campus it was, and what a great experience it was. And so all of a sudden, her son was being taken to fine dining restaurants, and he was so uncomfortable. She said he was so uncomfortable about the whole eating thing that he didn't enjoy this amazing opportunity. She said, so he and I started watching YouTube videos trying to catch him up on, dining etiquette and the things he needed to know. She said, but he never was really comfortable doing it. And so what could have been a wonderful experience, a wonderful, addition to his resume became something he kind of dreaded because he just wasn't comfortable in that environment. Parents, the thing is you and I, we don't know where our kids are going to end up. We don't know the doors of opportunity that are going to be placed before them. Our job as parents is to prepare our children, prepare them as best we can for all of the possible opportunities that are going to come their way. The thing about teaching them the skills of etiquette is it gives your children a level of confidence that they can't get anywhere else. They can have all the book smart you want them to have, but if they don't have confidence in knowing that they do know how to handle themselves in most situations, once you learn the basics of etiquette, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you're with, what type of dinner or party or business function. It doesn't matter because you know the basics of communication skills, of introductions, of table manners, of respect and integrity. And so you're not intimidated. You're not also intimidated by the people you're with. So not only the situation, but it doesn't matter if you're dining with the president or dining with the queen or dining with your friend, because you know what to do. So I had, I was looking at my little list. I was doing a workshop one time with a group of adults, a group of parents, and it was a parenting coaching class. And the room I was teaching in was full. All the seats were taken. In fact, I had people lined up standing on the walls, and the back door was kind of full of people. So it was just they gave me too small of a room. But anyway, so I get into the room and I notice how crowded it is, and I kind of look around and trying to assess the situation, if there was anything we could do to get extra chairs and that kind of thing. But what I noticed was that a lot of the adults that were in the class, I had several parents that had their children with them. And then I also had, as I looked at some of the people that were lined up on the wall, I noticed that there was a pregnant lady, a very pregnant lady, standing against the wall. And I thought, well, that's odd. Why is she standing? Why has no one gotten up to offer her seat? So anyway, things like that, if you've heard me talk before, you probably have heard me mention things like this. Things like that make me kind of crazy. And so I got on the microphone that was before me, and as politely as I could, I said, hey, everyone, I see that we're full, which I'm excited that you've all come. But I tell you what, if you don't mind, if you've got children who are taking seats, if you could maybe put them in the floor. There was really big aisles, and I said, or maybe sit them on the aisle, and let's let some of these adults, especially these ladies, standing on the wall, if we could let them have the seats, that would be great. Well, do you think I had a lot of people that put their kids in the floor? And do you think I had a lot of gentlemen stand up and let the ladies take their seat? I didn't. Shockingly, no. A couple did, but the majority did not. And I knew what they were thinking. They were thinking, Miss Urban, we got here first. If they wanted a seat, they should have gotten here earlier. And that's why we're here. And I'm not going to make my children sit on the floor because someone else decided to wait to the last minute to come into the room. I know that's what they were thinking, you all, because that's how our society thinks today. It's kind of every man for himself, and if you snooze, you lose kind of mentality. And it's not about me standing and judging people in this situation. But when I see situations like this, it makes me sad. It makes me go, how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we don't continually try to think, assess situations, and make decisions about how I can value others. And so that's a lack of skills, parents, because I know everyone in that room, I'm sure those people sitting in those chairs were good people who live good lives, who wake up every day with a desire to be kind, because most people do, right? I mean, I think most people wake up every day and we all desire to be kind. But if we have not been taught to think a certain way, to think like chivalry, to think like generosity, to always err on the side of compassion and err on the side of generosity, then we don't recognize the opportunities when they're before us. That's the problem is we want to get our kids to recognize opportunities to be kind and to recognize situations that are not showing kindness. But we tend to all walk around with these blinders on today, and we're not really paying attention. I was also on a bus recently. It was one of those buses that take you from where you park your car to the terminal of the airport. And it was a little 5-minute ride, to the terminal, but it was extremely crowded. And look, I think men and women both should offer their seats to the elderly. I don't think that's just a man's responsibility. But this elderly couple were picked up after my stop. I was already on the bus. I was standing. And then this little elderly couple got on the bus, and they were struggling. I looked up. I was wondering what was taking so long. The bus driver was sitting behind their little steering wheel, and this elderly couple was struggling to get their luggage up the steps because it was heavy and they were old. And so, and I'm not telling you this so it sounds like I'm saying what a great person I am. I just noticed it. And so I went ahead and I lifted this luggage up and, helped this elderly couple onto the bus. Well, y'all, there were no seats available. So I'm assuming the second people see how old this couple is, that people are going to stand up. But they didn't. They literally didn't. And so I looked down at two young girls who were sitting because they were on their phone. Now, they weren't trying to be rude. They just weren't paying attention. And I said, "Hey, girls, would you mind letting this elderly couple take your seat? I think they need to be seated and not standing." And both of them looked up and said, "Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, of course." And they stood up and the elderly couple sat down. But, no one had noticed. And parents, it takes purposeful teaching. When I teach children what it means to have chivalry, the number one goal that I teach them is chivalry means that I walk around with my head up and my eyes open, because every day I'm kind of just scanning the room, scanning the hallway, scanning wherever I am. And I am paying attention to who might need help, who needs a little assistance, who needs a smile, who needs a hello. But our job is to look around us and pay attention. But parents, it does not come natural. Not for me, not for you, not for our children. You have to train your kids to think like that. And that's why Stacy and I are so committed to helping you in an organized, purposeful way teach your children the skills of kindness one at a time, so it becomes a part of who they are. So it just is natural for us to look around, noticing for help. I'll give you one last example, and then I'll share some good examples. I had a friend call me. This was last year, and her son had just the night before had gotten back from prom, his high school prom. And she knows, I teach etiquette, so she thought this would be of interest to me. And she said, "Monica," she said, my son was just so disappointed in what happened last night with his date. And she said, he invited a young girl to go to the prom with him, just as friends. And neither one of them had a romantic interest, but they're good friends. And she wanted to go and accepted his invitation. And she said they had a decent dinner. Dinner was good, but the girl didn't really, didn't compliment the dinner or say anything nice about the dinner. But anyway, they get to the prom, to the location of where the prom was. And she said about 5 minutes after they arrived, the girl that her son took noticed a group of her friends across the room. And she said to her son, "Hey, I'm going to go say hi to my friends. I'll be back in just a bit." Well, she went over there and she never came back. An hour went by and her son was kind of pretty upset about it. And so he went over to and got her from the group of friends and said, "Hey, could I talk to you for a second?" She's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he said, "Hey," he goes, I think I'm going to go. And she's like, "Really? You want to leave?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I think it's just not as much fun as I thought." And he said, "Look, I don't mind if you stay, if you think you could get a ride home, or I can take you home now." And she said, "No, I'll go," and stuff. Anyway, he takes her home. She never thanks him for the prom, never thanks him for the dinner. The thing is, parents, this is not an unusual story, to be honest with you. It's happening too often these days. I'm sure this young woman is a lovely girl, but she's missing some skills, right? She's missing the skills. She was not taught that if ever you accept a date or accept going with someone, attending a function with someone, that your goal or your purpose or part of your responsibility is to be with that person. And that we always thank people who spend money on us or spend time with us, and that we're very generous, and that if we're ever with someone, our job is to make that person feel comfortable and valued. And so she would know that leaving him and going to talking to her friends is not appropriate. It's really rude. It's not appropriate to have private conversations with someone else when you're with another person. There's just so many little skills that were dropped during that night. And so my point in sharing these examples with you is not to degrade other people. And to be honest, when I'm teaching children, a warning to all of us parents, it's really not appropriate for us to be with our kids and notice someone else's lack of manners and go, "Hey, do you see what they're doing over there? Okay, that's not polite. You need to make sure and you don't do that." So we never point out when someone else is doing something wrong, when we can see the person, because it's like we're speaking badly about someone. And we don't want to do that with our children. There's always a better way. You could maybe a couple weeks later say, "There was this time and I saw this person," but you don't ever do it in the moment because it's like drawing attention to someone else's lack of manners, which is not polite. You can make a note of it to talk about it at another time. When you never want to use an example of bad manners unless you are certain that the people you're talking to don't know who you're talking about. So we would never use an example of bad manners about someone that the people we are talking to know who we're talking about. Does that make sense? Because we don't point out other people's bad manners. But there's a better way to teach our kids, and that is when we notice things, make a mental note and say, "Have I talked to my child about that? Have I taught that principle? If not, let me think about it for a couple of days, maybe use a resource from Stacy and Monica, and figure out what's the best way to teach that etiquette rule." So let me give you some exciting, now you might have read this. I shared this example actually last week, but in case you didn't read it, I'm going to share it with you during this Facebook Live, because this was a really fun example. So I had a mom come up to me, and her child had gone through our manners program, and her daughter had been extremely shy, painfully, her mom described her as painfully shy. But after she was purposefully taught many, many etiquette skills, she started coming out of her shell. She started growing in confidence, and she turned 16. She was ready to get a job. So her mom said that she went and got a job at a local privately owned pharmacy. And it was a cashier job. They just needed a cashier. So she applied, she got the job. Well, about 2 weeks after her daughter started working there, the mother said the owner of the pharmacy called her. And she said, he just told me, I just want to thank you for your daughter. He said, she is the most professional, kindest employee that I have. And he said, I've never been so impressed with a young person, but a person in general. And he said she, went on about all the different things he was impressed with. He said, if you don't mind, if it's okay with you, I wanted to get your permission to invite her to go through some type of tech training, assistant pharmacy technician training. I'm not really sure what the title was. He said, but I would like to pay for her to go through this training because I'd love for her to be able to work inside the pharmacy with us. And so she did it. At 16, she was able to get some type of certification that allowed her to do something else and make a little bit more money. Kids, I've heard so many examples like this. Today, the truth is, those that have really great manners and those that don't, that spectrum is getting further and farther apart. And what I mean by that is if you went back 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it wouldn't be that impressive to meet someone who had impeccable manners, who had impeccable chivalry, because most people, that was important to everyone. Today, however, when we come across a young person with impeccable manners, we're all like, whoa, what planet did you just land from? It's really impressive because we don't see it as much often these days. And that's why kids, parents, if you want to set yourself apart from the crowd, it's manners, it's chivalry that's going to do that. It's so wonderful to stand out from the crowd for the right reasons. One time, my youngest son was with me at a convention. We were in Cincinnati, and we were working at our booth, and beside us was a local Cincinnati company. It was a pretty big company. They had never been to a homeschool convention before. They were just kind of trying out the market. But they had laptops and iPads, and so it was some tech company. I'm not sure, kind of like an off-brand. But anyway, it looked pretty impressive. They had a lot of technical products. And so they were our neighbors. We didn't talk to them that much because we were busy. But at the end of the first day, so at the time my son was 16, at the end of the first day, one of the men beside us kind of motioned for me to talk to me for a second. He said, "Hey, Miss Irvin," he said, "Hey, would you mind if I talk to your son about a possible job?" And he said, I don't want to take him away from, doing what y'all are doing, but, could I talk to him for about 10 minutes? I just wanted your permission before I interrupted y'all's flow over there. And I said, well, we don't live here in Tennessee. So, I was assuming that they knew he was a teenager and wanted him for some job that a teenager could do. He goes, oh, well, that's okay. Wherever, we'll recruit him, regardless of where he's from. And all of a sudden I realized that they thought he was older than he was. And I said, do you know he's 16 years old? And he goes, wait, what? He's 16? I go, yeah, he's 16. And he goes, oh my goodness. He goes, me and my partner have been watching him this whole day. And the way that he talks to people, the way that he interacts with everyone, he said, we have been so impressed. We've been eavesdropping on his conversations all day, and we want him to work for us. And I go, well, that's not going to happen for at least 6 years because he's got college after he graduates. And he goes, well, could I still give him my card? And I go, hey, knock yourself out. You're welcome to talk to him. So he did give my son his card, and he told my son, hey, when you're about 6 months away from graduating from college, will you call me and give me an opportunity to recruit you? And so, parents, that's what I'm talking about, is when you make it purposeful in teaching your children the skills of etiquette, and it just becomes a part of who they are. Today, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, it's impressive. It's impressive, and people are impressed with that. Once again, it wouldn't have been as impressive a few, 100 years ago, but today it is. And so we just don't realize the doors of opportunity that await our children when they have these skills engraved upon them. Me and my husband own a couple of restaurants. We've had them for 30 years. And I've interviewed a lot of kids and adults along the way. And so in the last maybe decade, we've noticed a change in how people come in for an interview. Our managers have noticed a change in how people come in for interviews. So let me give you an example of what's pretty common. There's two different types of people that come in for a job interview at a restaurant. Let's say for a server position. And I'll give you an example of absolutely what I've seen. So let's say one guy walks in and he's got, he's clean, but he's got a t-shirt on, a nice t-shirt, blue jeans, a pair of flip-flops, and he walks in and says, "Hi, I'd like to apply for a job." And I'm like, "Okay, what kind of job are you interested in?" "Well, I'd like to be a server." "Okay, well, let me get you an application." So I go to the office, get an application, bring it out, hand it to the young man, and he says, "Hey, you got a pen I could borrow?" And I'll say, "No," whether I have a pen or not. And he goes, "Okay, I'll bring it back," and off he goes. That's a very common way that people come in and apply for a job. Then on the rare occasion today, unfortunately, or the more rare occasion, another young man will walk in. And this time a young man will walk in with maybe a pair of khakis on, some loafers, button-down shirt, tucked in with a belt would be miraculous. And he walks in and puts his hand out and says, "Hello, my name is Ray Duncan. I'd like to apply for a job. Could I speak to the manager, please?" "Yes, you may. I'm the manager, and what kind of job are you interested in?" "Oh, well, I would do anything, but I'd love to be a server, or, I'm open to learning anything. But could I fill out an application, and would you have time to talk to me after I complete the application?" "I believe I would." And so I go get an application, hand it to him, and he says, "I already have a resume, so I'll attach this to the application, but I'll fill this out and be done in a few minutes." And I watch this young man walk over to a table, pull a pen out of his pocket, and begin filling out an application. Now, is it rocket science to determine which one of these young men have a higher chance of being employed at our restaurant? It's not, right? It's not rocket science, you all. But I'm going to tell you something. If you haven't taught your children the skills of interviewing, the skills of applying for a job, the skills of introducing yourself correctly, the skills of eye contact, the skills of being prepared, the skills of dress, how we dress like a gentleman, how we dress professional, if we haven't verbally and physically talked about those skills and practiced those skills, it doesn't come natural. And it doesn't, because 90% of the people that apply for a job do it the other way, the way that's not as impressive. So I could go on and on with so many different examples, but I won't. I'll stop. Parents, what I hope, and kids, what I hope, is that you will get excited about learning manners and chivalry, and that you will realize that the payoff when you exercise these skills in your life is huge. It's 1,000-fold. I would imagine that all of us, young and old, would look forward to having 5 doors of opportunity open before us. Like kids, when you graduate from high school or graduate from college or graduate from trade school or anything that you're going to do, would you like to have 5 choices about what you might could do? That would be pretty cool, right? And you could choose any of the 5. Well, what if there were 50 doors of opportunity? What if you had 50 different choices of what you could do when you're ready to enter your adult life? Would that be fun? Would that be good? What if there were 500 doors of opportunity? Would that be better? Would you like that many choices? Learning the skills of etiquette is about creating more doors of opportunity for yourself. That's what happens. You get a lot more opportunities. And you get opportunities that you would not have otherwise. I had a son that was able, when he was 17, still in high school, was able to shadow a physician, a surgeon, for 6 months, for a semester. Literally watched this surgeon do surgeries as a 17-year-old. Why would that happen? And how does that look on someone's resume when you're 17? Well, it looks pretty impressive. That would never happen unless that physician could trust that young man impeccably with their professionalism, their integrity, their trust, their responsibility. Kids, what happens when you practice these skills? People tend to trust you more. They like you better. And you just get more opportunities. And opportunities creates more opportunities. One opportunity leads to other opportunities, and it just kind of builds on each other. So I hope you will get excited and become dedicated into learning the skills of chivalry. Stacy and I would love to help you. Once again, you all, we're so excited. The release of Fundamentals for Kids is going to be February 1st. It is a subscription box along with incredible online activities. The kids will learn 1 skill per month. They have about 15 different activities every month to participate in to help solidify that skill so it can become a part of who they are. And we cannot wait for it to be released and for you to get your hands on it. If you have not done so yet, please visit our website, Fundamentals, the number 4 kids.com, and register so that you will get notified as soon as that subscription is available. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for listening. And Stacy will be hosting our live event a week from today. You all, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Bye.